Welcome back. I'm Judge E.J. Russell, and you are tuned in to Unmuted. We're going to talk for a little bit about the Goon Squad. And the Goon Squad is a group of law enforcement officials located in Rankin County, Mississippi, next door to the 82% Black city of Jackson, Mississippi. Now, in January of 2023 at 9:28 p.m., a Deputy Dedmon texted 3 members of the Goon Squad, "Are y'all available for a mission?" Because there was a chance of cameras, he told them to work easy rather than kick the door down. Deputy Hunter Edward responded with an eye roll emoji. Daniel Updike, also a deputy, texted back an image of a crying baby. Dedmon texted the group, "No bad mugshots." It was a way to greenlight any excessive force. Just make sure you can't see it on the face when they come in for the mugshot. Now, after kicking in the door, instead of moving easy as they had been directed, they entered the house. They had no warrant. Tasers are designed to incapacitate a suspect by transmitting a 50,000 volt electric shock. Deputies used them instead to torture Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker after handcuffing them for no reason. When Dedmon demanded that Parker tell him where the drugs were, Parker replied, "There are no drugs." Dedmon took out his gun and fired it into the wall. Not the taser, but his gun, and fired it into the wall. Dedmon again demanded to know where the drugs were. Parker responded again that there were no drugs. The deputies hurled racial slurs at the black men, accused them of having sex with the white woman who owned the house that they were in, and told them to stay out of Rankin County and go back to majority Black Jackson. When Updike, a deputy, found the dildo, he forced it into the mouth of Parker. But before he could do the same to Jenkins, Dedmon grabbed it and slapped the 2 black men in the face with it and taunted them with threats of rape. Dedmon also threatened to anally rape the men with the dildo, but stopped when he discovered that Jenkins had defecated on himself. Elwood put his gun into Jenkins' mouth and pulled the trigger. The loaded gun clicked. Elwood racked the gun again, but when he pulled the trigger the second time, the gun fired. The bullet lacerated Jenkins' tongue and broke his jaw before exiting his face. Now, this is not in the 1800s. This is not in the Jim Crow era. This is in the 2023 world. Let me give you some background on the Goon Squad, because the sheriff says he didn't know anything about it. And by the way, that sheriff was sworn in a couple of days ago for 4 more years. He had no opponent in him running for sheriff. So he'll be there. He has said that he's going to continue to train his officers and make sure that they're doing things by the book. However, the Goon Squad of January 2023 is eerily similar to a Goon Squad which previously existed under a sheriff by the name of Lloyd Jones. Now, Lloyd Jones is supposedly the mentor for Sheriff Bailey. We got it now? The person who led the original Goon squad was a guy named Lloyd Jones. Lloyd Jones is the self-admitted by Sheriff Bailey that he was his mentor. And he had a reputation for terrorizing Mississippi's Black community. And a lawyer in Mississippi, Constance Slaughter Harvey, a lot of people will know that name because she's done work with civil rights cases all over the country. She said of all the law enforcement officers she ever questioned, he was the most detestable. He constantly used the N-word. And she took his deposition back in 1970, where he repeatedly used it, and kind of like he was taunting her, and then defended his use of it. But now, Sheriff Bailey is under Justice Department scrutiny for his office's Goon squad, which terrorized the 2 Black men that I told you about a little bit ago. Hurled racial slurs at them, used a sex toy on them, and shot one of them in the mouth. And earlier, or late last year in November, the New York Times and the Mississippi Center for Investigative Reporting found a disturbing pattern of violence by Rankin County deputies stretching back over 20 years. They found dozens of allegations and corroborated at least 17 incidents involving 22 victims based on witness interviews, medical records, photographs of injuries, and other documents. The brutality takes you back to Jim Crow days when some law enforcement officers carried out violence in the name of preserving the Southern way of life. Between 1956 and 1975, Lloyd Jones worked as an inspector at the Mississippi Highway Patrol. Civil rights leader gave him the name Goon, and the nickname stuck, and the folk he led took on that name as well. Now, the Justice Department concluded that Jones killed Ben Brown in 1967. Brown, who had been involved in the civil rights movement, happened to walk past a standoff between law enforcement officers and protesters near the Jackson State University. The FBI quoted Jones as telling a coworker that he killed the N and with his 12-gauge shotgun took it home, cleaned it, and hid it out in his attic. He admitted in a sworn statement that he fired his shotgun 10 or 15 times that night. And then 3 years later, Jones was over troopers who, along with Jackson police, responded to a protest on the Jackson State University campus. Law enforcement fired more than 400 rounds of ammunition in less than 30 seconds, y'all, in every direction. And many of them struck a woman's dormitory. Jones declared under oath that there was a sniper that fired at them. One sniper shot and you're going to fire 400 rounds of ammunition in less than 30 seconds. At the end of all of this, nobody heard a sniper fire. They only heard the 400 rounds fired by state troopers and Jackson Police Department. By the time the gunfire ended, 2 young men were dead. Philip Gibbs, a political science major who was married and had 2 children. James Green, a Jim Hill High School senior who was walking home from work. But a dozen others were struck by the bullets. Now, this is just an idea of what this Goon squad under the leadership of Mr. Jones was doing, who was indeed the mentor of Sheriff Brian Bailey. Now, John Perkins, who led activists on February 7th, 1970, they marched in Simpson County. Jones had 14 troopers watching their every move. And this is all documented in court records. Fellow activist Doug Humer was arrested on a charge of reckless driving. He said a trooper had already told him that if he didn't leave Simpson County, he would kill him. Troopers hauled Hummer and other activists to the Rankin County Jail. When Perkins heard the news, he headed that way. After arriving in the jail, Perkins and Hummer said they and other activists were brutalized by then Sheriff Jonathan Edwards and other law enforcement officers. An appeals court judge had already concluded that Edwards and his deputies beat Black Mississippians who attempted to vote. Homer said that after one officer whacked him 4 times with a blackjack, he saw stars and fell to the floor. And while being held in a different room from Perkins, he said Jones kicked him and told him, "We could have killed you a long time ago." He said he balled up in a protective posture to protect himself from the blows to his head, and he thought he was going to die. Perkins said another officer jammed a pistol against his head, and he thought he was going to die. But the harassment didn't stop after their release. Some months later, Hummer was jailed in Rankin County again, this time after making a U-turn. He said the judge was going to let him go until the judge found out that he had been involved in the protests in Simpson County and ordered him to be put behind bars for making a U-turn. Hummer said he and Perkins became victims not just of a racist paradigm, but of the authority given to Southern white sheriffs following the Civil War and enlarged during the Jim Crow era. In 1976, Jones became the sheriff in Simpson County, where the Perkins family lived. A sense of fear and terror pervaded the Black community, said Perkins' son, Derek. People were afraid. They knew he could go inside their homes and arrest them for anything. The FBI quoted Jones as saying, "Those ends don't mess with me in Simpson County because they know I will put them in their place." Mary White, who served for decades as secretary for the Simpson County NAACP, described that time as rough on Black folk. The Goon Squad was eerily similar to the one when Rankin County officers tortured my father and beat him in Rankin County, said Perkins. The spirit of Goon Jones lives on through the Goon Squad, and we've got to break the Rankin County Goon Squad cycle. It's difficult to say that you don't know what's going on when perhaps you were part of what was going on. Perhaps. Maybe. But former Commissioner and Police Chief Robert Johnson said he supervised 4,000 officers and civilians. Brian Bailey supervised 400. But he didn't know what was going on. We'll be right back after this break.